Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. In this video I'm discussing all the books I read in September, from the first book to the last book. Like previous monthly review videos, for each book I'll provide just a brief description of what I thought. I won't go into great detail because for most every book that I do talk about in these monthly videos, there'll be a more detailed book review on my channel at some stage. Just when I get around putting it up there. I do fall a bit behind on those videos, but hang out for those. And if any books in this video pique your interest, don't forget to subscribe because one of those detailed videos will appear eventually. But anyway, let's get down to the books I read for September. I started the month by reading The Heiress, written by Rachel Hawkins. Now, I don't have the greatest track record reading this author, but I still like to give her books a go because there are good things in her books. And this book does have some good things, but unfortunately for me, it has a lot of negatives as well. I'd say if you're not too keen on the sound of this book, wait for the movie if a movie is going to be made. That's my view, because I think the movie would be better. Because I think one of the things in this book is there's certain like cut scenes. So something happens, then we have a gap. And then the next chapter or the next section is a big jump from what happens in the previous section or chapter. And I think personally that those things are missed. There are good things that should be there that aren't. It's like they're taken out. It's like someone said, cut those sections out. And for some reason they were. Or the author didn't know how to write them. Something big happens, doesn't know how to write what it actually is that's happening, and jumps to a scene where somebody's concluded that thing, or they're passed out and they wake up, or whatever. It's like that in this book a couple of times, and especially towards the end when big things do happen. That's a big disappointment for me with this book. And also it's a bit repetitive, so it's meant to be thrilling, it's meant to be psychological, it's meant to be, suspenseful. But it wasn't all those things in this book for me anyway. And it has big chunks of like letters. Letters a character who's deceased in the story is writing to somebody else. And they're very detailed, very long. And they do pull you out of the present narrative, but those letters have some good detail in them. But unfortunately, they're just too long. They need to be shorter. And maybe just have past narrative chapters, I don't know. Maybe the author thought it'd be interesting to have letters there instead, something different. I don't think it needs to be letters, I just think past narrative chapters would do the job and maybe better. Because in letters, how detailed can you really be in letters? I mean, these letters, they seem like they're pages and pages long. This person has a lot to get off their chest. Why not have a past narrative when we have from that person's point of view in the story? That's my view anyway. Watching You by Lisa Jewell. I enjoyed this a lot. Do you ever have books when you read them and you don't want them to stop? You want those characters to continue on and on and on past the book you've just read. I felt that way with the characters in this story. The characters are written so well. There's great misdirection, there's great doubt, there's intrigue and suspense all through this story. I like the way it's written, I like the way it's structured, I like the characters, I like the plot, I like a lot about this book. It's a great book, I think, and Lisa Jewell is not an author where I rave about every book she writes. But this book is wonderful in my view. What I like about this book is it's not overextended, and by that I mean the author had a structure, a plot, and kept to it. Didn't go off the rails, didn't go on tangents that went everywhere and anywhere. This book is very controlled, it seems very tightly written, and I appreciate that because some thrillers, some domestic style thrillers especially, they go off the rails quite often. There's moments where things happen and you think, just hang on. How can that happen anywhere? Even suspending belief for a fiction book, how can that happen? And I think a lot of domestic thrillers fall into that trap. But this book didn't fall into that trap. Everything just felt right. Everything felt like it could happen in real life with a little bit of suspension of belief, of course, but not too great. So in my view, not overextended, very well controlled, very well written, great characters, great suspense. This is a book I guarantee you will like. The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden, the second book in the Housemaids series. I enjoyed this. I mean, Freida McFadden just knows how to write good popcorn thrillers. And she's not ashamed of it, I think, anyway. And many people enjoy these books. I'll put my hand up and say I enjoy these as well. I don't enjoy all of her books though, not all I've read anyway, but I do enjoy this one. What I like about it is the short, sharp chapters. There's no filler. It reminds me in style of James Patterson. Short chapters, fast movement in the story, just the important things being told to us as readers. Great suspense in this book as well. There are great twists and turns. There's a lot to like about this book. Structure-wise, it's very similar to the first book in the series, so no big surprises structure-wise. But I just like the characters. I like the way it plays out. I like the suspense. I like that it's a bit over-dramatic as well. I think it fits that style, the style of the book, the settings and the characters. I enjoy a lot about this book. And I can't wait to read the next book in the series. What I like McFadden to do actually is try something more gothic. I'm not sure if she has written anything more gothic in style. I haven't read all her books yet. I do plan to read them all. But I just wonder, this author I think could write something more gothic, maybe in the style of Virginia Andrews even. If anybody could do that, I think this author can. For You and Only You, written by Caroline Kepnes. I feel compelled to read this series, and this is the 4th book in the You series. The last book so far, I have no idea if there's going to be a 5th book or a 6th book, whatever. If there is, I'm going to have to read it, even though I don't enjoy them that much. And this book just feels like the first 3 books rehashed. Little tweaks here and there to make it feel fresh and new. I mean, Joe, the protagonist, is somewhere different, but he's the same Joe. So the storyline's the same. He's somewhere new, he goes somewhere and he sees somebody and he thinks, you're the one for me. He's fixated on somebody straight away, and then he's wondering, how can I get that person to myself? What obstacles do I have to remove? And of course, obstacles are that person's friends and family, colleagues, whatever. Joe just sees them as things to move or get rid of, so he gets his prize. So the overall plot of this book is the same as the first 3 books in this series. And what is it about names in these books? So the person Joe is fixated on is called Wonder. So W-O-N-D-E-R, Wonder. And her sister is called Cherish, I think. And what is it about names in these books? Why not just normal names? And I think it was book 2 in this series we had Love, L-O-V-E, as the character that Joe is fixated on. So all these strange names popping up, and maybe it's just strange names he likes. Maybe it's not the person themselves. Maybe he is somebody that says, hi, my name's Sparkles or something, and goes, okay, that's the person for me. Maybe that's book 5, Sparkles. I don't know. But these books, they're not my favourite at all. I think out of all the 4 so far, I like the first one the best. Maybe because it's just fresh and new in that first book in the series, and every book after that is the same thing rehashed with a few tweaks here and there because Joe goes somewhere new and meets someone different. If There Be Thorns, written by Virginia Andrews, I really enjoyed this book. If there's an author who could ever write great atmospheric books with huge emotions, melodramatic, overdramatic, big scenes, big emotive scenes, emotive characters who act, crazy sometimes in the books. If somebody can do that and make it feel just more real and lifelike, Virginia Andrews can do that. This book is very atmospheric. It's quite gothic. It's a bit dark as well, but the characters are brilliant, and the points of view in this story shift. So in the first 2 books in this series, it was Kathy, one of the original siblings. It was her point of view telling the whole story. In this book, it's her children, and her children, I think, are around maybe 9 and maybe 13 even, a few years between them, but they're quite young. And it's their point of view telling the whole story, and the chapters alternate between the 2. So we have Bart and Jory, and they're telling the story. Telling the story now that we have Kathy, who Kathy is living with her brother and pretending to be married, and her kids don't know any different. They think that Kathy's brother Christopher is her brother-in-law. They don't know that they're brother and sister. But this book is also about secrets and the fact that secrets don't stay hidden forever. So what's going to happen? What dark things erupt in this story? And this book gets darker as it progresses, and that's one of the things I like about it. There's dark and light evenly towards the start, and then the darkness grows larger and larger, and that light just diminishes. And the ending suggests big things in the next book in this series, and I can't wait to read book 4. There are 5 books, I think, in total in this series. I think the 5th book is a prequel to the first book, but I can't wait to read the rest of this series. It's a great series so far. By far, this book and the first book is better than the second book, but I think this book is amazing. The Tea Ladies, written by Amanda Hampson. I really enjoy this. It's a cozy mystery, the first book in a series. So far, there's 2 books in this series. It's set in the 1960s in Sydney, Australia, and the main characters are all tea ladies, and they work in companies, and their job is to serve tea, coffee and biscuits to all the employees. That's their job. And they're all friends. They've known each other for different time periods, but they're all friends and they meet every lunchtime and outside office hours as well. But in this book, of course, they're solving a mystery. But it's not the main mystery that's a big draw card for me in this story. In this book, it's about the characters. It's about the setting. The setting's described so well in this book. The characters are amazing, and they have subplots, quite a few subplots, and they're amazing as well. I prefer the subplots over the main plot in this book because it's the subplots where the characters come alive when you learn more about them, and they come out of themselves and develop and grow in the story from those subplots. That was interesting because usually you'd think characters develop more in the main plot. Didn't seem to work that way in this book. I enjoyed it though. I was immersed in that scene in the 1960s. I thought the whole book was wonderful. A Glimmer in the Hollows, written by Lorna Selley. It was an arc read for me in September. It's a horror. This is interesting. The concept is great. And it had vibes in this book from The X-Files, from Stranger Things, even Supernatural, those TV shows. I felt those vibes in this story. That kept me reading the book. But the book itself, well, there's good things in there, good creepy things, but not all the way through the story. There are dark things as well, but not all the way through the story. The writing felt a bit YA to me. It's not a YA book at all. There's scenes and language and things going on that's not YA at all in this story, but it felt YA to me in the way it's written. And also there's this romance angle in the story. And the romance angle between the two characters feels very forced. Doesn't have great natural growth in the story. And doesn't really make sense why they're together in the first place. But that romance angle, it takes over the whole book from when it starts. That's a shame, because that book could have been great on the concept. And there were good creepy things happening through the story as well. But when the romance took over, those creepy things became smaller and smaller in the book. The last maybe 3 or 4 chapters of the story are great. I think that shows the author can write really well, and I enjoy them a lot. If that feeling, that tone and vibe from that last section of the book had been all the way through the story, this book would have been amazing. Listen for the Lie, written by Amy Tintera. This was my first big disappointment for the month of September. I had reads I didn't really enjoy that much before this book, but I thought I would enjoy this book. I was looking forward to reading this book very much, but it was very disappointing. Disappointing because of the way it's written. I didn't really enjoy the writing style. The narrative voice of the main character, the protagonist, I didn't enjoy that at all. It's very snarky, but overly snarky. It's like very forced. I don't mind if a character's snarky here or there, where it's part of their personality, but when it's their whole personality, there's no other growth or development in that character but being snarky. What's the point? We get it in the first few pages. We don't need to be reminded of it with that character's attitude. So for me, a letdown on that. Then also, just things going on in the book, other characters, overall structure of the story. And one big thing I can't really mention in this video, but there's one thing that's a big no-no for me in any book. Just interactions between the main character and her ex-husband. I mean, I don't know why it's like that in the book. If you want to know more about it, go and read it. Maybe there's reviews out there will tell you more. But for me, this book is disappointing, a big letdown. There's things in here I think don't need to be there. And I just think that this book is a big win for the marketing team. The marketing team, I think, is the reason this book is selling, because for me, this book really doesn't deserve the hype. The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I have a complex reading relationship with this author. I know she can write really well, and there's one book called The Guest List, which I loved. But I also know that each new book is a gamble, whether I'll love it, kind of like it, or not really like it much at all. And this book fits somewhere in the middle for me. One of the reasons is it should be darker than it is. And it feels like there's no really character growth in most of the characters. They feel very one-dimensional. But there's one thing in this book I enjoyed, and it's the local folklore of the area. But that thing is dark, it's atmospheric, it's a bit gothic, but it's very underdeveloped in this book. Could have been made bigger. And just more things in the book based around that. Would have drawn in atmosphere, would have drawn in suspense and tension, but there's not enough of it. And let's face it, the main character in this book is just Gwyneth Paltrow with a different name. There's no two ways about that. It really is. If you read this book or you've read this book, I wonder what you think about that. For me, the main character is based on Gwyneth Paltrow. Then there's other things going on as well. So the author suggests this is a mystery. It's not really a mystery. There's one character when we're led to believe that she plans something going on through the whole book. She doesn't. It's all by accident. So those kind of things disappoint me in a book like this. It suggests the author didn't plan this really carefully before writing it. I get that impression with this book. Then She Was Gone, written by Lisa Jewell. I really enjoyed this. It's what I call a quiet mystery. It has suspense and tension in there, but it's quiet. It's quietly told. There's no huge scenes. There's no kind of big shock moments to grab your attention and kind of hook you. It's all about characters and atmosphere in the tone of the book as well. So for me, I like books like that. I like quiet books. I like books when they're written very well and they're quiet books because it just shows the author knows all about control, about how to make a compelling story without trying to go over the top. And this book is a perfect example of that. The characters are amazing. There's just great question marks around all the characters, every one of them. You're wondering what if about so many of them. And you wonder about them from the very time you meet them as well in this book. So I like the way that's done. I like the interactions between the characters. They feel real. They feel like real people living real lives in this story. Very hard to do, I think, in books sometimes. Not every author can do that, I don't think. Not for characters of all different ages and genders. I think some characters know how to write certain age groups very well. Maybe male or female characters a bit better than others. But in this book, every character is written very well. It just shows this author is very skillful in writing characters, I think. Maybe not in every book she writes, but in this book, the characters are amazing. If you like quiet style mysteries, if you just like a good structure in a story, to be compelled to read based on characters, on their point of view, on the tone and feel of the story, then give this a go. Again, it doesn't rely on big shocks or tricks to hook you in. It's just well written with great characters. Gwendy's Button Box, written by Stephen King and Richard Chizmar. It's the first book in a trilogy, and this book is more novella, I think. Now anyway, what did I think? Well, overall it was average. Not what I expected at all. You could have called this What Gwendy Did on Her Summer Holidays. You really could have called it that and be done with it. Gwendy is a teenager when we first meet her. She's at high school, and a strange man gives her a box. It has buttons on it. It does other things as well. Read the book if you want to know more. But it should have been also called Stranger Danger, and it is set in the 70s, so maybe stranger danger wasn't a big thing back then, I don't know. If a strange man in a hat turns up at a park and tries to give you something, if you're a teenager, I mean, would you hang around and accept that? But Gwendy does. But anyway, then the rest of the book is about her, growing up a few years as a teenager, coming of age. And it's one of those stories as well where it's about this person who has a chance to reinvent themselves. And is that a positive thing or a negative thing? The changes in Gwendy's life, not just her life, but her friends and other people around her. That's explored in this story as well. It's meant to be a horror though. It's meant to be suspenseful. Not much horror in there at all, not much suspense, other than Gwendy's a bit uncomfortable with this box. So for me, a letdown in the horror suspense stakes. Maybe there's a few good things in there. I mean, it's not all dull and boring. There are a few big things happen to Gwendy, but for me, not that great at all. I then read Gwendy's Magic Feather, written by Richard Chizmar. Stephen King apparently had nothing to do with the second book in the trilogy. You could have called this What Gwendy Did on Her Christmas Vacation. It's all about her in her 20s, I think, going back to her hometown, staying with her parents. There's a reason she does go back there. Very emotional in the story, so it does have a few emotional scenes and moments in this book, which are good. But the rest of it is a little bit dull and boring. Then there's this mystery going on in the town as well, where girls are vanishing. And Gwendy, for some reason, gets herself involved and starts to investigate it. And I think in this book, she's a congresswoman or a senator or something. I mean, everything happens magically for Gwendy in this series. By this stage, I think she's a best-selling novelist, I think maybe, even a documentary maker. Maybe that's the third book, I can't recall now. But all big things happen for Gwendy. She can't get enough of getting big accolades and making a lot of money and all these big achievements. It seems like everything she touches turns to gold. So in these books, There's nothing really challenging for Gwendy at all because everything she does is perfect. But anyway, this book is a bit dull. I don't see the reason why we have a second book in this series, maybe just to get to the third book. And I think the third book, Stephen King had some part in that. I'm not sure how big a part, but the third book is a bit better. I think better than both of them anyway. But in this book, I was very disappointed in the story. There are emotional things going on with Gwendy and her parents. That was good, a good part of the book. But the rest of it, I don't know, it's just really what Gwendy did on her Christmas vacation. I then read the third book in the trilogy, Gwendy's Final Task, and it's written by Richard Chizmar and Stephen King. So both authors, I'm not sure how much percentage-wise the authors contributed. I'm guessing Stephen King had some part of it because this book is a bit better than the first two, but then again Stephen King also had part of the first book, so who knows. But anyway, this book is Gwendy in space. Not kidding, Gwendy, our main character, goes to space in a space shuttle up to the International Space Station. She's a congresswoman, I think, in this book, and she goes up into space. I think she's in her 40s or 50s, and she has no big training being an astronaut. And she's also got onset of dementia as well in this story. But despite those health problems, she still goes into space. Anyway, there's a reason for that we find out in the book. But the best thing about this book is finally we have a good villain. And finally, it took 3 books in a trilogy to get there. We have a great villain. The villain is tropish in many ways, but I'm willing to forgive those tropes because finally we have a good villain to talk about. I won't tell you what goes on in the story, but it's the best one of the trilogy. For me anyway. I think a lot of readers like the first one more than the second and third book, but for me I like this third book the best. There are good moments in here, but again, everything comes up trumps for Gwendy all the time. There are more challenges in this book for her, so that's the reason I like this as well. It seems a bit more challenging for the main character, where the first 2 books were too easy, but in this book, a good villain, not a fantastic story, and Gwendy in space, I mean, come on, do we need to have this character going to the International Space Station to finish off this trilogy? I don't think so. The Quiet Tenant, written by Clemence Michallon. I love this book. Despite it being unlikely, the scenario is not that likely, but it does happen because we've seen scenarios in the news cycle, maybe the last 5 or so years, where something like this will happen. So you do hear about stories like this sometimes. It's not that common though, as far as I know, but it can happen. But anyway, despite being unlikely, this book is amazing. It comes down to the characters and the way it's written. The writing style I think is amazing. The suspense and tension is brilliant, and the characters are brilliant as well. All the characters are amazing in this book, and the villain in this book is written so well. He has different sides he shows to people in his personality. He controls himself so well, and he shows a sunny side to people in this small town. Then he shows his darker side in different moments in the story. And those snap moments where he changes, they're very creepy as well in the story. I love the atmosphere, I love the tension, I love the fact that characters feel just real and lifelike. Even the character that has moments to try to escape here and there, and she chooses not to, or she feels she can't, I mean, that all feels so real. This book feels very visceral in its emotions in the story. I really enjoy this book, and I can't wait to see more by this author. The Body on the Beach by Simon Brett. So it's a cozy mystery and the first book in the Feathering series, a long-running series. And this author has other series out there as well. And now I want to read the rest of this series and his other series. So more series for me to read. I recently went through my books for the last few years. I wondered how many series I've started and not completed. I think it's over 100. I mean, it's out of hand. How can I finish 100 series? And then every month it seems I start another series, at least one. I mean, it's getting out of hand. I've got to stop. So I'm trying to make a pact with myself to start finishing series, especially the smaller ones where there's not many books so far. Just get them off the table and concentrate on longer series as well, especially ones that have been hanging around for some time, even rereads. I need to go through and finish those rereads I've been doing on series I've read them all before. Anyway, this book is good. And like the first book in many series, it concentrates more on setting and characters than the mystery. That's okay with me because cozy mysteries are all about characters and setting anyway. So I enjoy this story. I enjoy the two protagonists. I think they're fun, a little bit quirky, not too much. They play with each other well in the story. I think this series is going to be great. The Cryptic Clue, written by Amanda Hampson, a cozy mystery, and book 2 in the Tea Ladies series. So it's only got 2 books in the series so far, so I can tick this one off to say I've read them all. It's set in 1960s Sydney, Australia, like the first book, and we have the same 4 characters who are tea ladies. We met them all in book 1, and in book 2 they develop further as well, so I like that. But this book, I think the setting wasn't described as well, and maybe because the setting was described more in book 1 to cement ourselves in the series. But I wish that setting was strong in this book. And like book 1, the main mystery wasn't that engaging for me as the subplots and the characters that are more engaging. So I did enjoy this read very much, but for the subplots and the characters. There are shifts in some characters' lives in this book, sometimes big shifts. I'm not going to tell you what they are, read it to find out, but it makes the characters more engaging and compelling, and really draws you into their lives. Someone We Know, written by Shari Lapena. While I enjoyed parts of this book, I think character development is very lax in this book. And I think it relies too much on other things, like secrets and lies and gossip. And that's okay in a book if we have great characters as well, because those things only carry a book so far. We need characters to engage into story as well. And that's a bit of a letdown in this book, but there are good things about this story. Because even though I think we need better character development, those secrets and lies and gossip, the way it's handled in the book, is intriguing and adds a bit of suspense in the book as well. So it plays both sides, I think, and that's why it's not a great read, but it's not a bad read either. So it's a good average story, it's solid, just needs better characters. But if you just like a book where you can read it quickly and not have to think about it too much, this is the book for you. Not a Happy Family, written by Shari Lapena. So the second book by the same author in September. I enjoyed this. So with the previous book I read by this author during this month, the characters weren't done very well, but in this book, they are. They're very engaging. They may be all unlikable, but they're very engaging in the story. And they have to be unlikable for this book to work. It engages you with those characters, with what they're doing. It makes you interested in them. And it even makes you kind of wonder which of the characters could be the culprit, because this is a closed circle murder mystery. And one of our main characters could be guilty. We don't know who. And it keeps you guessing all the way through. Another thing I like about this book. So there's much to like about this story, and I think it's my favourite Shari Lapena book I've read so far anyway. But those characters, with them all being unlikable, it's a big risk. It's a risk that paid off for the author. I think well done for doing that in this book, for taking that risk, because if those characters were likable, if even one was likable, I think this book wouldn't be the same. Because with them being unlikable, they're doing awful things, saying awful things about each other, wondering awful things about each other as well. And they just fit the whole tone and feel of this story. First Lie Wins, written by Ashley Elston. Another disappointing read for me during this month. And I wonder if this is a month where I've had more disappointing reads than any other month so far doing this channel. I don't know. But this book had a great concept, but the execution was just so badly done in my view. It's not all terrible, and it's not an awful story. Great concept, some good little twists and turns here and there, good surprises. But on the whole, not well done in my view. This book reminded me of the TV show Alias, and also a movie called Nikita, and I think the American version is called Assassin. So this book reminds me of both those things very much. It's almost like the author took concepts from that TV show and that movie and just made the protagonist parts of the main characters in those mediums. That's what it feels like to me in this book. And with the main character, she's a genius at doing what she does, but she has no training. So there are people who work in the espionage field, and they're trained, of course, trained to pretend to be somebody else, infiltrate people's lives. It takes great training to do that because you have to live as that person and think like that person and be that person all the time. So how can our main character do that all the time with no training? Doesn't make sense to me as a reader. That's a big problem I have with this story. There are other things going on as well. I think when there's reveals happening in the story, characters accept those things too easily. I think it becomes no challenge going on in the story overall for certain characters. So for me, This book is a little bit badly structured. The concept's good. The concept's great actually, but the execution is not that great at all. One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. Disappointing for me again. So I think this is book 4 for the month, where I was looking forward to the read, but disappointed by the end. This book paints itself as being a mystery, but it's not. There's no mystery at all. We know who the villain is, we know what's going on, there's no mystery. So for me, that's disappointing. And the setup for this book, we have a long lead-in, a very long lead-in, with 2 characters who aren't very engaging. And one of those characters is the protagonist of the book, who's not very engaging for me at all. There are other characters in this book who are more engaging for different reasons, but the protagonist I just found just hard to relate to, just hard to like in the book overall. And what goes on in the book is a bit predictable sometimes, gets a bit repetitive. There are moments that are shocking, I'll give it that. There are shocking moments and twisty moments, but not enough of them. I know a lot of readers enjoy Ruth Ware, and I've enjoyed books from her more than this book. I've not read all her books yet, I do plan to. But this book just felt like it was phoned in really. It felt like we had a good concept, but she didn't know where to go with it. She put these characters on an island, isolated them in a big event, a huge event, but then kind of left it and didn't know what to do, and made these characters become super one-dimensional when the characters could have been deeply developed because they're on this island in this situation that's super stressful. But that would have drawn out different things in the characters. What we see is very stereotypical of a situation like that. Not a bad thing, because if you're in a situation like that, maybe you do act in certain ways, but I don't know. I just wish we had a bit more depth in those characters. I don't think it was deep enough to go into those characters. Even showing a bit more of their history at certain times would have been good little snapshots, but we get one-dimensional characters for the most of the story. We get little snippets of depth here and there, but not enough in my view. Everything's Eventual by Stephen King, so a collection of short stories and novellas, I think 14 in all. I enjoyed this overall, so on average, if I average all my scores for each of the novellas and short stories, it becomes above average. There are some here I didn't really like at all, some I'm just thinking, what's the point of them? But there is a lot to like in this collection. And we have links to the Dark Tower series, we have some mentions of Derry, other things going on, so some interesting things in this collection. I do read collections like this, knowing I'm not a fan of short stories and short novellas. I prefer long novellas or novel length. So I do approach these collections with that thought in my mind, but I'm open-minded and I want to be surprised. So there are short stories in this collection I love, but there are things that just bore me to tears in this collection as well. So overall, above average. I will have a video on my channel at some stage for this collection where I rank the stories from least favourite to favourite. Look out for that if you're interested. But overall, above average and a fairly good collection overall. The last book I read was Death at the Dinner Party, written by Ali Alexander, a cozy mystery, an arc read for me in September, and the third book in a secret bookcase mystery series. While I enjoyed this, I didn't enjoy it as much as the first 2 books, and part of the reason is, I think, that the bookshop, so the bookshop that's the central part of this series. This series is called a secret bookcase mystery series, and it's called that because the bookshop where our main character works is called a secret bookcase. But in this book, that bookshop hardly gets a mention. Gets a chapter here or there, maybe a part of a chapter as well, where the main character's there for work. But overall, some characters I like that are based in that bookshop don't make a big appearance in this book. And the second thing is, we have a romance that's brewing between a main character and another character in the series. It's brewing for the first 3 books, and in this book it gets a bit stronger. And we know that something's going to happen maybe in the 4th book or the 5th book, but eventually they're going to start going out and being together. We can see that happening. But in this book, I get little hints. Maybe that romance angle is going to start taking over. That will be disappointing for me because the first 2 books in this series, the mysteries were so strong. Other characters coming in and out were so strong as well. But in this book, that romance thing going on, that friendship developing more and more, became the big thing, I think, in this story. That's disappointing for me in a cozy mystery series. So anyway, we'll see how it plays out. But I don't know. I don't know if I have the best feeling about what's going to happen in the next book in this series. There you have all the books I read for September. I don't know if you can hear it on the video, but maybe for the last 5 minutes or so of this video, there's a storm brewing overhead, quite loud thunder, heavy rain. It's been brewing all day and it's finally hit. So apologies if you can hear that in the video. Can't help it, of course. I can't control the weather. Anyway, for all the books in this video, all the books that are mentioned, eventually I'll have a longer version of a book review on my channel. So if any of the books interest you in this video, subscribe and don't miss out on those long version book reviews coming up at some stage. And finally, if you've got books you read during the month you really enjoy and you think I'll enjoy as well, put them in the comments section and I'll add them to my TBR. And if I can get a copy of them, I'll read them. On my channel, I review books of all different genres. Check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to the video for a book I'm sure you'll enjoy.